Hi everyone, I'm Kate Kennedy and I'm here with day 59 of 100 Days of Kane, PA. And today we're talking with Jim Graville, longtime business owner here in Kane, about what it was like for him growing up here, stories about his time in business, and why he loves being in Kane. So I'm going to go ahead and flip you around and we're going to go down here and talk with Jim. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. What a beautiful day.
What a beautiful day and what a beautiful setting. We're here at your house. And we're really excited to hear some stories that you are going to share with us today. So let's start with, were you born in Kane?
I was born at the community hospital here in Kane. Dr. Hockenberry delivered me.
All right. So he was the doctor before Dr. Sicker.
That's right, he was.
Okay. And what year were you born?
1958.
And you came home to the house that you're currently living in today, right?
That's right. I grew up here and eventually bought it from my parents.
And have this great backyard.
That's right.
So you grew up in this neighborhood. What were some of the stories or memories that you have of being a kid growing up here?
Well, one of the first memories I have, when we were little kids, we had this place that we called Down Back. And what Down Back was, obviously out behind my parents' house, we built little roads and everybody built their own little house with bricks. And then they'd go to the 5 and 10 in town and buy a plastic car, and they'd have their own car, maybe a truck. A lot of us had our own little businesses, but we had this little community that we built up. And of course, since it was in my yard, I made sure we had enough fire trucks.
So your parents' house, which is here, which is now your home, and then this is Down Back. This is where this little community was that your friends built with you when you were a little kid.
That's right. And right behind us here is the Rails to Trails.
Oh yeah, so this is the part of the Rails to Trails that is eventually going to become a bike path, huh?
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is a gorgeous area. So when you were a kid, you did that, and then when you got a little bit older, what are some of the ways that you spent your time?
Well, then we started playing softball as we got older. We would play softball in the vacant, or the field beside my parents' house, which is now where my mother's home is. We played softball there for hours and hours and hours, day after day. When it got dark, then we'd turn to hide and go seek and spotlight. And I guess as we got older, maybe even turned into spin the bottle once in a while.
And there was a little like grove or pavilion or something that your grandfather built, right?
That's right. Right behind the softball field, or past the softball field, was a row of pine trees, and then a grove or a pavilion, and a tree, hemlock grove there, and the pavilion was where we'd sleep there and camp out there, and play games there. Definitely got a lot of use out of it. There was the guys in the neighborhood. We kind of thought we had a lot of buddies, because the older kids that were old enough to drive would cruise by on Friday and Saturday nights and stop. And it wasn't until we got older that we realized they were just stopping because of all the pretty girls that were here. But you had the Mertzes and the Huckabones, Jamersons, McGews, Weavers, Forkers, Johnsons.
Lots of families that would come and hang out and spend time together and attract some attention.
That's right.
That's fun. So in high school, what were some of the things that you were involved in?
Well, in high school, in middle school, I played 1 year of middle school football and 3 years of basketball. But I was involved in the photography staff in middle school, and then as I was getting ready to head into high school, Garen Smith asked me if I wanted to be part of the high school staff, and he said that takes a much more bigger commitment, which would mean I'd have to drop sports, because I'd be taking pictures of all the sports, and there's only 2 photographers per class, so they needed me to be 100% committed. So at that time, I changed my ways and stayed with went into photography. I later became the president, or the head photographer for the Hurricane Yearbook.
Oh wow! So photography's been a love of yours for a long time.
That's right. After high school, I I attended college in Orlando, Florida for a short while, and took some photography classes. Mostly I was taking hotel restaurant management classes.
And so what year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 76, and I wanted to be sure and mention, aside from being proud of being part of the class of 76, the bicentennial year, I wanted to touch base with how many students from my class actually ended up being business people and employers in Kane. I wrote it down. I didn't think I could remember, but obviously myself. But Mark Sirianni, Sirianni Jewelers, Dr. Gary Anderson, Steve Chittister has a lot of employees in his business. Rick and Trudy Powell and Tim Weil had his own business.
Yeah. And they were right here in Kane.
That's right.
Employing people and having their businesses here, including you. So how did your business start?
Well, I was going to school in Orlando, and when I came back after the second year, my parents had the Windsor Bar and the Birdcage and the hotel beside it. And on the first floor of the hotel were 2 storefronts, and those 2 storefronts had gone vacant and needed remodeled so they could be rented out. So I came home to do the remodeling of those 2 stores, and in the process I asked my parents if they would be interested in giving me a good deal on some rent and trying to open up a camera store. And that's how it became.
And you named it the Photo and Sound Shop.
Photo and Sound Shop. In 1978 I opened up.
And so you were selling photo stuff. And what was the sound?
The sound was mostly car stereo, but any kind of stereo at that time. And but that was in the days of the Canon AE1, and when people would buy a big bag of a camera and 4 or 5 lenses and filters, and there was a lot of accessories that people would buy. And I got in at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And then how long until you also had Radio Shack as part of your business?
Well, I had competed with Mike Cardamone from Cardamone Electric, and in 1981, one day he called me to come up and have a talk with him, and I went up to talk, and he had already had it all written out and planned. He said, I'd like to sell you my business. I'd like to go full-time flying airplanes, and I think you're the guy that should own this business. So I came home and asked my parents if they'd co-sign a loan for me. and it wasn't long after that I was moving my store into what was 68 Fraley Street. It's the old Cardamone Electric store, and I combined my store and kept the name Photo and Sound, but at that time we kind of started going more so by the name Radio Shack, and that was our franchise.
And how long were you in that location?
I was there from 81 to 99.
And then you moved across the street.
I did. I bought that building in October of 99 and opened up on Halloween Day in 99.
Oh, fun. And so you've been in business for 41 years now.
Yes, 41.
And I'm sure that you have a lot of memories of your time in those 41 years. Is there anything, stories or memories or things that you want to share about your time?
Well, the great people that I got to know. I figured, I'm sure that I've had over the years more than 100 employees. My first employee was Tom Orzetti, that just sold that natural store. And he was the head photographer the year before I was. So our relationship had gone back before that. So he was my first, and then one of my other earliest employees was Jeff Lou Larson. Lou's, look at the little, it just scooted away. But we just had a chipmunk. He was about ready to bite your toe. But Lou worked for me for quite a while, and for the past few years has worked for another company, but he still has his office in my store, so he's still kind of my right-hand man, been around from the beginning. Other employees, there's so many, I'd love to mention them all, but John Perry worked for me and eventually became, when he and Joni got married, I was his best man in their wedding. So
really
there's a lot of stories like that.
Yeah, developed a great friendship in addition to working together.
Yes, and then if not Lou, my next longest term employee was my son, Jimmy started working for me. I would say 4, because he used to slide a chair over by the cash register and stand on the chair to ring people up at the register. And of course, his job title changed over the years. He got more and more involved. There was a time when we were installing satellite dishes for Radio Shack, or through Radio Shack, and Radio Shack actually paid Jimmy to go around to northwestern Pennsylvania and train other franchise stores, their installation people, for installing satellite dishes.
Wow.
And then he wanted to make more money, so I guess it was in 2005 we started selling Carhartt, and he was in charge of the Carhartt, so he ran the Carhartt business, and we got that Carhartt trailer, or the clothing trailer, and he'd go around to job sites and factories and set up camp for a day or two, and sell product right on scene.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. It's great to see how you kind of shifted with the times, starting out heavy on the cameras, then moving. I remember when you had cell phones, when they were new, and you had that business in there, and then the Carhartt business was part of your business too. And you had another interesting business in there too for a while.
The cross-country skis, yeah, and I think it was 1979. It was in the earliest days I started selling cross-country skis, and that was during the big boom, when families were coming in and buying the skis for the whole family. Mm-hmm. In fact, you interviewed John Knapp not too long ago, and he talked about his family all having skis. Well, I think they bought them all for me. But when I moved into Cardamone Electric Building, there was a lot more expensive electronics there, and I had 50 ski rentals at one time.
Oh, wow.
And so every Friday, 50 people would come in and get their skis and carry them out, and every Monday they'd carry them back, and we were hitting and banging electronics, and and it was way too crowded. And so I sold that ski business to Ned Carger, and Linda and Ned ran that business down on Kinzu Avenue. They had a little shop down there to sell the skis and rent skis out of. And then they eventually sold it to Bob Barron.
Oh, that's so neat. Yeah, cross-country skiing is so beautiful here in the winter. Are there any other employees that you wanted to mention? I kind of shifted topics there for a minute.
There was just so many.
Yeah, those are really great stories that you did share. Okay, so that's your work, and I'm sure that takes a lot of your time, but I also know you're really involved in the community. What are some of the ways that you are involved here in Kane?
Well, I joined the fire department 39 years ago, I guess now. Time flies. And I've served as a fire chief, as a president for a few years. The last dozen or more years, I've been the safety officer for the fire department. And so I'm still active. And Rotary, I was president of Rotary 2 different times. And I was on the original Art in the Wilds board, and it's still active on that board. And then, of course, just 6 years ago when we started the radio station, WXCY Radio, Joe Szymanski had this great idea. He had a lifelong love of radio and communications, and there was a window of opportunity coming up where the FCC was going to release just so many licenses for low-powered, non-profit FM radio stations. And Joe did his homework, and he was well prepared way before the opening date that you could apply for this license. And knowing that it was going to be non-profit, he knew he had to have a board of directors, so he started recruiting people. And I think Tom Orzetti first, because Tom's a radio guy too. And so Tom agreed to be on the board, and then Judy agreed to be the secretary. Then he went to Chris Nicholas because the Kane High School was just starting their video channel on TV, and Joe and Chris wanted to be able to share audio feeds. So Chris agreed to join the board for that connection. Then he went to Father Phil and asked Father Phil to be the connection between the Kane Ministerial Association, because he wanted to have church services on and the morning devotions and such. And then he wanted one more person, and I guess he couldn't think of anybody else. Actually, later on, he asked me because he wanted good deals on Radio Shack stuff. And at the time, though, when Joe asked me, he didn't realize that I had been on the board on the community relations board for Denny Heindel's 2 of his stations. So I actually did have some radio experience, and and obviously some marketing experience. So that's a position I hold now with the station as a marketing director. But the station is completely made up of all volunteers. The board is all volunteers. Joe Sumanci, Joe that's the president, his son Joey is our marketing or our program director, and he does that out of Ohio where he lives. And then he travels 1 month a year in his mobile home and has a studio right in it, and continues to work for us and continues to do his other job. Joe's a voiceover for a lot of, you'll hear his voice without seeing his face on many TV commercials.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Yeah. Someone right here from Kane.
And he's very, very professional voice, and we're awful lucky to have him. But he's volunteer. Our sports announcers are volunteer. The only people that are paid are the news, the people that do the daily news and the weather out of Erie.
Wow.
Jet weather.
What a great commitment. Volunteering levels in Kane always amaze me. That's so awesome. And it sounds like you're very, very busy at work and outside of work, but I know that you also spend time with Kathy. How did you guys meet?
Well, Kathy and I went to high school together. Well, we graduated the same year. We weren't in the same social circles at all in high school. And so at our 25th class reunion, she was the only person Friday night when we had our little class party at the Kane Manor Friday night. She was the only one at that party that I didn't know by name.
Oh, really?
And she had been away. She had been in the Air Force and lived in a few different countries, and had just moved back to Kane and was single, and so was I. So shortly after that 25th reunion, we started dating.
What's the next reunion year that you're celebrating?
Oh, geez, don't ask me that. 45.
Oh, wow. Don't you love Alumni Weekend?
I sure do, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about Kane. So you were born here, raised here, chose to have your business here, raise your family here. Why is it that you love Kane?
Well, I think that the relationships you get to have with the community, how close you can be, how easy it is to be significant. I don't think you can do that in a bigger town. And everybody has a significance in their own way. So to be a part of that is just an opportunity that most people don't have no idea what it's like.
That's a really good point. And then you also get to know who to call for what, because you know who's good at what and who can take care of what. And I think that's a really, really great point that you raise.
Yes. And obviously you wouldn't live here if you didn't love the forest. The 4 seasons is just, we're so fortunate. I know there's times that we probably wish winter was shorter than it is, but it's still a beautiful season, as is all 4 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is great. Is there anything else that you want to share that you didn't get a chance to talk about today?
There sure is, Kate.
Oh.
I want to talk about how fortunate Kane is to have you.
Oh, geez.
Since April of last year, you came on board. You hit this town a ball of fire, really working hard. Our chamber office had gone the better part of a year without a director, and so the mountains of work that had built up, and through CARE and KAIDC and the Chamber of Commerce, you came on and you weren't afraid to tackle any project. And of all the things you're doing and how much work you're putting in, I can't believe this 100 days. I'll bet you didn't know it was going to be this much work when you started.
It was kind of ambitious, but I'm loving it. And getting to talk to people like you and hear your stories and just learn about people has been awesome. So yeah, well, thank you, Jim, for those kind words. I am so happy to be home. Thank you again for your time today. Anything else before we go?
No, just thank you.
Okay, well, thanks again, Jim. Thank you guys all for tuning in. And again, I've never ceased to be amazed at the level of volunteering that the people in our town do. And I loved hearing Jim's stories about how the radio station got formed and the ways that people are contributing of their own time. It's just such a great town, and I would love to hear from you. Just, again, why do you love Kane? I've asked this question a few times throughout this series, but I think it's time to revisit it. So take a minute, think about it. Why do you love Kane? And write it in the comments below. I can't wait to hear from you, and we'll see you again tomorrow for day 60.